calcium from your diet.
I'm sorry, I'd forgotten to record you, Nancy, and I just started that.
Okay, fine. Only take a supplement if you can't get your calcium from your diet, and only to the level your diet's deficient. So for example, if your goal is 1,200 milligrams and you figure that in a day you got 800 milligrams of calcium from your diet, then you obviously would only supplement 400 milligrams, but hopefully you can get to the point where you don't even have to take a calcium supplement. You want to be sure, if you do have to take a calcium supplement, be sure that your blood or urine calcium levels are not elevated. There was a study published several years ago in the journal Menopause. And what they found is that they were able to look at data from previous studies where they had seen adverse effects from calcium supplements like kidney stones. And they were actually able to predict which women were more likely to have had some of the side effects from calcium supplements by looking at their 24-hour urine calcium levels. And the more elevated they were, the more likely they were to have problems, and were probably people that shouldn't have been on a supplement to begin with. So recommended amounts for women over 50 is 1,200 milligrams, and then for men over 70, 1,200 milligrams. Of course, you can use labels, you can use online tools, and fortunately now the food labels tell us how many milligrams of calcium, so we don't have to do all the percentage calculations like we used to. Oops. Okay, so vitamin D is the other nutrient that we tend to talk about or think about when we think of bones. And once again, vitamin D is essential for the absorption of calcium and phosphate into the bone. And it's really kind of hard to get it from your food because there's very limited food sources: salmon, tuna, egg yolks, fortified foods, and mushrooms. And then, of course, sun exposure, but that can depend on the time of year, where you live, the color of your skin, whether you have sunscreen on. The studies, it's interesting because there's mixed results from studies as far as supplementing with vitamin D or with calcium for that matter. What's clear from the research is that if you are a very elderly nursing home resident and you're malnourished, then absolutely vitamin D and calcium supplements make a difference. But it's really questionable as to whether these supplements do you any good if you're not in that area. And you definitely, there's no good data to say that adding supplements on top of a diet that's adequate does you any good, and that it may actually cause more harm. Because if you get too much vitamin D, it causes your body to lose calcium and can actually adversely affect your calcium level. You know, it's really interesting because vitamin D, we know when vitamin D is too low, it increases your chances of falling. But also the research shows that if vitamin D is too high, it also increases your chances of falling. So it's really important to get it in that desired level. And many of the bone experts recommend 30 to 35 nanograms as being the ideal blood level of vitamin D for your bones. And another source I like is consumerlab.com. And they actually recommend if your vitamin D level gets up to 39 and you're on a supplement, that you need to back off on the supplement and keep it in that desired level. And it's really confusing because there's no standardization with US labs on what is a normal vitamin D. And when they give, it depends on the lab, but usually you've probably noticed the levels can go up really high. And so people automatically think, oh, well, higher is better. I'm gonna try to get my vitamin D way up there. And in reality, that really shouldn't be your goal. So if you need a vitamin D supplement, then absolutely you need to take it, but only take vitamin D supplement if you're deficient. Or if you are going to take a supplement, it needs to be at a maintenance level, like what you might get, you know, in a multivitamin, but not in the higher levels unless you're deficient and need it. If you are going to supplement, then D3 is the one that's best absorbed, and it's even absorbed better if you take it with a fat-containing meal, preferably not at the same time you take vitamin K, if you take that, because they will compete with each other and you probably won't get the maximum absorption. The general rule is 100 international units of vitamin D will raise your serum level 1 nanogram. If you're overweight, it's going to probably take more, but that kind of gives you an idea. So let's say you've got your results and you were 20 nanograms and you wanted to be 30, then you would want to take, 1,000 milligrams, 1,000 international units of vitamin D. So protein is a key component of bone. And as we get older, we actually need more protein than when we were younger women, or men for that matter. 25 to 30 grams of protein per meal is what I recommend, and assuming 3 meals a day. And that's pretty easy to do if you eat meat and if you're at your lunch or your dinner, because even as small as a 3-ounce serving of meat with 3 servings of vegetables is going to get you right in that range. But where I see a lot of people don't get that much protein is in their breakfast. They're having cereal or breads or fruit and not getting that much protein at breakfast. So that's where most people need to focus. And if you find that's impossible at breakfast, you can always get part of it at breakfast and part of it as a mid-morning snack. But as we get older, it seems like we do we become less and less efficient at getting enough protein, and that's the time when we really need it more. But you just don't want to overdo animal protein. Really try to do vegetarian meals at least several times a week. And if you are a vegetarian, that's actually great. You're just going to have to work a little harder to be sure you get that much protein in. And then, of course, if you are doing a really intensive strength training program, you may, depending on your size, et cetera, need more protein. So if you only remember one thing I say today, and hopefully you'll remember more, is to eat lots of fruits and vegetables. We all learned 4 or 5, at least I did when I was in school. And now I'm recommending you have at least 9 servings of fruits and vegetable a day. And a serving is only a half a cup of a cooked or even a raw vegetable, unless it's greens like lettuce and kale and spinach. And then I recommend a serving be 1 cup. And of course, one of the main reasons is because fruits and vegetables have a lot of the key nutrients that you need for bone strength. They have a lot more of those nutrients than animal foods do. If you're going to get calcium from a variety of sources, then you need to eat a lot of plant foods. And of course, you can eat them in the traditional way, cooked with your meals or salads. But if you need to get them in even more in, then smoothies, pureeing them in soups, cooking greens are also great ways to get more fruits and vegetables. We already know that lots of fruits and vegetables are going to reduce your risk of some cancers, diabetes, heart disease, Alzheimer's. So we already know they're good for us, and we can just add bone health to that. At last count, over 200 studies that showed that fruit and vegetable consumption, as it increases, so does your bone density. In other words, fruits and vegetables are very good for your bones. And as we go through some of these other nutrients, you'll see all the reasons why. It's kind of interesting. This is some newer data on bone resorption inhibiting foods. And bone resorption is a process where your bone tissue breaks down and then calcium that's in your bone gets released into the bloodstream. And there are some foods that seem to inhibit this, and they're called bone resorption inhibiting foods. And this is a good thing. And they include oranges, prunes, and y'all have probably seen the research on prunes and how good they appear to be for our bones. And maybe this is one of the many reasons. Tomatoes, green beans, which I don't think of as being the most nutritious of vegetables, but this is actually one in the bone resorption group. Cucumbers, broccoli, lettuce, preferably other lettuces than iceberg. Also herbs like dill, sage, garlic, parsley, thyme, rosemary are really great ways to not only, we'll talk about, they also are alkalizing, but they're also bone resorption inhibiting. So use them freely. And they found, the research found that women that consume 9 servings per day of these particular foods were found to have a decrease in their bone turnover. So just some foods to keep in mind as you plan your menus. Y'all are probably familiar with the alkaline diet theory, where we want to talk about reducing dietary acid load. I always like to be sure everyone understands, because there's a lot of misconceptions and confusion about this out on the internet, for instance. But your body has to maintain a neutral pH in your bloodstream. And if a person is eating a typical Western diet, which is probably a risk factor for your bones, then they're eating lots of meats, lots of breads and cereals, and very few fruits and vegetables. So their bloodstream will start becoming more acidic. However, your body can't let that happen. It needs to stay at a neutral pH in order for you to stay healthy. And there's actually little receptors on your bones, and as your blood starts to become more acidic, it triggers those receptors. And one of the things they do is draw calcium out of your bones. And that's great because it will neutralize the pH and keep you nice and neutral, and everything, you'll stay, healthy. But it's really bad on your bones if that's how you've eaten your entire life. And that's why there's concern that this dietary acid load issue may be a risk factor and contributing to all the osteoporosis we see in Western countries. It's probably even more significant as we get older, because we do tend to decline in our kidney function. So breads, pasta, cereals, rice, meats, fish, egg yolks, cheese, these all release acids upon metabolism. And these are not bad foods. They are good foods. It's fine to eat them. We just need to eat lots of fruits and vegetables to neutralize that acid, because those are alkaline foods, and they will help to neutralize that. So it's also important to understand that it's kind of confusing, but you take, for instance, a lemon. Well, if you squeeze lemon juice on a piece of metal, it's obvious that it's acidic, but we're not talking about the acidity of a food before you eat it. We're talking about what the food releases into your bloodstream when you metabolize it within your body. And so a lemon might be acid before you eat it, but the metabolic byproducts are alkaline. So it's safe to say that all fruits and vegetables are going to be an alkaline and neutralizing. I know there's, you can test your urine. I really don't recommend that if you want to spend your money on pH urine testing. It's not going to hurt anything, but it's really not necessary. I know there's lots of charts out there on the pH of foods. If you've ever tried to use those, it's very difficult and it's not really practical. Really, if you just follow these guidelines, you'll be fine. You just need to keep this in mind, that for every slice of bread, cup of pasta, grain, or rice, as well as every cup of milk, yogurt, beans, every egg, and every ounce of meat you eat, you need to have 1 serving of a fruit or vegetable. So if you have a 3-ounce piece of fish for dinner, be sure you have 3 servings of fruit or vegetable. And once again, that being half a cup of a cooked or raw vegetable. And then if you are talking greens, a cup of raw greens. And then for cheese, once again, there's nothing wrong with eating small amounts of cheese. And we're going to talk about that more when we get to K2. But you're going to have to eat 2 servings of fruit or vegetables. If you use lots of herbs and spices, those are alkalizing. So that's another good way to alkalize your diet. Mineral water, not seltzer or soda, but actually mineral water, and preferably not one that's high in sodium. But mineral water has lots of bicarbonates in it, and they're very rapidly absorbed in your body, and they're a really good way to alkalinize as well. That's one of my favorite things to do if I'm at a party or an event, and there are very few fruits and vegetables and lots of other things. If they have mineral water, I always try to do that, or at least put some lemon or lime in my water to help alkalize my meal. So vitamin K, there's two forms of vitamin K to talk about. One is K1, which is key to blood clotting. It's found in leafy greens, also in prunes, which is kind of interesting. Broccoli. It's pretty easy to get vitamin K in your diet. The foods that is K2, which is the other form of vitamin K, which has a different role. It draws calcium into the bones and helps incorporate it actually into the bone matrix. It's also key in keeping excess calcium from accumulating in your arteries and veins. And I always wonder when we do see, because it's been kind of controversial as to whether calcium supplements can cause calcium buildup in your arteries and increase your chances of heart disease. I always wonder if those people that had that issue maybe weren't getting enough K2 and they may have been more prone to that. Natto, I don't know if you're familiar with it, that's a picture of it up there on the right in the corner. It's a fermented soybeans. It's a traditional food for breakfast in certain areas of Japan. It's an excellent source of K2, and it's really the only non-animal food that's a source of K2. And in the area of Japan where it's a traditional food, they have a much lower rate of hip fracture than the areas of Japan where it's actually not eaten. It's an acquired taste. I don't know if anyone's ever had it before, but it is an excellent source of K2. You can also get K2 in chicken, beef, egg yolks, cheese. Grass-fed beef is going to be higher. What I generally recommend is a really good way to get your K2, and I think enjoyable, is an ounce of cheese every day. Not only do you get your K2, but you get some calcium and you get some protein, and it's a fermented food, so you're going to get some good probiotics as well. And this is just an example of some cheeses and how they rank as far as K2. This is newer research. Some of the original research didn't have on this high, and they've kind of discovered that they may contain more than they originally thought. However, it can vary according to what the animal that's the source of the cheese was eating. So you can't always be sure that isn't going to vary some. But not fat-free. Vitamin K2 is a fat-soluble vitamin, so it's got to be a cheese that has fat in it, not a low fat. There's really no specific requirement for K2, but if you eat an ounce of one of these cheeses, you get within your vitamin K recommendation. So potassium is key because it helps neutralize your bone depleting acids, which helps conserve calcium in the body. Amazingly, many Americans only get half of what they need. So it's a common nutrient for people to be inadequate in. The food sources are fruits, vegetables, seeds, and nuts. Whole grains are going to have more than white bread. And if you do the 9+ servings of fruits and vegetables a day and try to incorporate some seeds and nuts into your diet every day, you should be doing pretty good on potassium. But if your diet, is high in processed foods, they're generally not going to be good sources. Magnesium is another one that in fact, 75% of US adults do not get adequate magnesium. And you've got to have magnesium to optimize your vitamin D level. If I have a client who's on his vitamin D's low, they're taking vitamin D supplements and it's not coming up, one of the first things we look at is their magnesium level and to see if and they often are not getting enough magnesium, which may be one of the reasons they're not able to optimize their vitamin D. Good sources are almonds, cashews, peanuts, leafy greens and vegetables, legumes, seeds, dark chocolate, and whole grains. The RDA for magnesium, at least according to researchers where that's all they do, is probably too low. And one of the big magnesium researchers recommends 3 milligrams per pound of body weight. And once again, if you just eat a lot of these foods, you should do good. Boron is a trace mineral that's essential, once again, to your bone maintenance and growth. It also affects the bioavailability of vitamin D. It supports both magnesium and calcium utilization, as well as bone deposition. And it's another nutrient I'll look at if someone's vitamin D isn't doing what we expect it to. It does increase your estrogen levels a little bit. So therefore, it's to be conservative or to be safe, it's recommended that if you are on estrogen replacement therapy, that you not take a boron supplement. It's fine to eat the boron foods, but just don't take a boron supplement if you're already on estrogen. Plant foods like fruits, leafy greens, nuts, legumes are all high in boron. Avocados are a great source of boron, raisins, peanut butter. There's our prunes again, prune juice, and I would assume prunes, red wine, grape juice, and pecans. But meat, fish, and dairy are all low in boron. So phosphorus is absolutely essential for building your bone. It's easy to get it from a diet if you eat whole grains, meat, poultry, and dairy. And there's a certain ratio of calcium to phosphorus that's essential to your body. However, what we're seeing and concerned about in the US is that people are getting too much phosphorus. They're consuming so much more phosphorus than calcium that it's equaling less calcium absorption. And the studies show that high phosphorus intakes really are bad for our bones, and that our intake in Western countries is probably 2 to 3 times what's recommended. And the reason for that is because of phosphate additives. They are in, you will be amazed when you look at labels, how many foods have phosphate additives. And the phosphate additives, they're in a free form and they're very bioavailable, meaning your body just scoops them right up and absorbs them much more efficiently than the phosphorus that you might get in, the food sources. So processed foods are one of the #1 culprits. The colas are too, and I don't recommend you drink colas, but if you only have 1 cola a day, that's not a huge amount of phosphorus. That's more of an issue in people who drink Cokes, colas all day. And so you have to read labels and watch out. And I put this chicken on there to remind me that even like when I at my grocery store anyway, just if I buy regular chicken, I look on the label, I see that they have filled it up, injected it with phosphate additives. But if I buy either organic or even if I just buy the natural chicken, they haven't added anything to it. So even things that you really wouldn't think of as processed foods can have it. So just watch out for it. And this is a list, and there's a lot more. This is not every one, but it's some of the more common phosphorus containing additives. The dicalcium phosphate, the tricalcium phosphate, I see those a lot in your plant-based milks. You have to look hard to find one that doesn't have phosphate as in the plant-based milks, but there are some. So what about salt and sodium? Well, we already know high sodium intake can be a risk factor for a lot of health conditions. The dietary guidelines are pretty conservative on sodium already, 2,300 milligrams for generally. And then if you are over 50, you're Black, you have high blood pressure, you have diabetes or chronic kidney disease, you really need to look at keeping it at 1,500. And then, of course, the American Heart Association recommends 1,500, which is a pretty conservative amount. The studies, when they look at the effect of sodium on bone density, they're mixed. Some of them say yes, some of them say no. But what it looks like is the higher the sodium intake, the higher the risk. So I tend to tell people, as long as you don't have other contraindications, you can use salt in your cooking, just don't add additional salt at the table. But it's more, the main source of sodium in our diets is processed foods and restaurant foods. I mean, it is amazing how much sodium is in some restaurant foods. And I've talked to several chefs about it, and they just love salt and they put a lot in our food. So if you're a person who eats a lot of processed foods, or if you go out a lot to eat, your sodium intake may be, too high. So coffee is the other one that a lot of people ask me about. And we know coffee's got antioxidants in it. It may actually be good for us in moderation. So the research shows even up to 8 cups of coffee, they saw no difference in fracture rates. However, they did, when you got up to that 8-cup point, they did see a trending towards lower bone density scores, but it didn't translate into more fractures. But I personally recommend, if you enjoy coffee and you tolerate it, okay, it's not contraindicated for other reasons. If you want to have 1 or 2 cups of coffee a day, that's fine. The amount of calcium you lose in your urine from coffee is not that much. You do, but it's not a huge amount. But if you're a person who just drinks coffee all day, then by the end of the day, it probably does add up to more than you want to lose. So moderation. Then there's alcohol, which of course can impair your balance and is a risk factor for falling. And we're all about not falling. The heavy drinking has a direct toxic effect on your bone. There's no doubt that it's bad for you. And people who drink a lot tend to lose a lot of magnesium in their urine. And it's really bad for your bones. Moderate, there really doesn't seem to be an issue as far as moderate intake of alcohol. But that's not that much. That's 1 glass of wine or drink, not that big of a serving a day for women and two for men. Of course, it's a personal decision, but I tried to figure out, okay, so what's the definition of heavy drinking? And there's no official, there's a lot of different ones, but I saw everything from 4 or 5 drinks at one occasion. So you go out for dinner and you drink a bottle of wine by yourself. And then the other definition was really barely above moderate. It was because moderate's 1 a day for women. So that's 7 a week. And they said 8 a week. So there's no consensus on that, but I think that it's like so many things in life. If you choose to drink alcohol, it needs to be, in moderation, and you need to be sure that it doesn't affect your balance and risk your chance of falling. So I hope that you're not confused, because I know this was a lot of info and for pretty good pace. Mediterranean diet is really basically what I'm recommending, but I'm also recommending that you work to get your calcium from food and not from supplements, if at all possible. And if you do need to supplement, only to the level that you need, and to not feel like if you take calcium supplements that there's some big advantage to that or to your bones. Eat as many fruits and vegetables as you can, and get your protein, but don't do mega portions of meat. Try to get some vegetarian meals in your diet. Avoid the highly processed foods because, as we talked about, the phosphorus and the sodium. Coffee and alcohol in moderation if it's not contraindicated. And then be sure your vitamin D level is normal, but that it's not too high. And then, of course, remembering the diet. Diet is important, but it alone isn't enough. You're going to have to do appropriate weight-bearing exercise that specifically focuses on your bones. Hopefully, a program put together by a physical therapist who specializes in osteoporosis. So if you once again, remember or do one thing, try to just eat as many fruits and vegetables as you can. They're so good for us. And I could talk all day on all of this, but if you want more information, check out my website. And I've been writing blogs for years. So the blogs are fairly short, and I tend to try to cover, each time someone asks me a question, I try to turn that into a blog. So there's a lot of good info on there that you might find helpful if you want more info. And I've got some eating plans, and then also do individualized consultations if you feel like you still need more info. But the info on my website is designed to help you hopefully be able to get your diet figured out on your own. And some people, decide maybe they need a little help, and I'm happy to do that. So that was it. Let's see. So that's about right. So do y'all have questions?
Yes. Could we stop the share so we can see the other people too?
Oh, yes, definitely. Okay.
Oh, wonderful. That was great, Nancy.
Oh, thank you.
Excellent presentation. And I know you have some questions. So yeah, lots of things in the chat. I don't know if you can see that. We have questions coming in on the chat.
Okay.
Well, the first one was, will we be able to see the slides?
I can send you, Shelley, I'll send you a PDF form of all the slides.
Oh, that would be
I
great.
should have done that ahead of time. That probably would have been good, but oh well.
Oh, it's great. After's even better. And then Steffi also asked, do you have any recommendations regarding multivitamins?
I don't, I only recommend them when I feel like someone's diet, isn't meeting their needs. And so it's a very individualized thing. So I don't really make, blanket recommendations on that. But I will say that if you feel you want to take a multivitamin, if you're familiar with consumerlab.com, I don't know if y'all are familiar with it. It's a website. It does have a annual fee. It's not a lot, and it is well worth it. They don't take advertising. It's run by pharmacists and physicians and researchers, and they review so many different supplements, and they give you all the research behind it, and then they test them for quality, toxicity, to be sure they really have what they say they have in them. And then they give you their top picks, and it changes because they retest stuff. So if you look at their multivitamin, they give some recommendations. And they always look at the cost, and they always tell you the ones that are most cost effective. They can't cover everything. But it really depends. Not everyone needs to take a multivitamin. We probably all need B12 at our age, but not everyone needs a multi. But if you do, they make a good recommendation. I'm trying to remember what they changed. I'm trying to remember what their most, I know for a while, do y'all have Targets in Boston? I bet you don't. Oh, you do? Yeah. I think Target Up and Up multivitamin was one that they've recommended. And then I've seen them recommend even the Walmart product. I don't know if y'all have Walmarts. Okay. And then they recommend some others, but those were the ones that I recall. And they say one a day multivitamin is fine. But they recommend the Target equivalent to that because it's more cost effective. If you decide you want to pay more for some of the higher quality supplements, Claire Labs is the one that I use. They make some multivitamins, but I think for the cost effective ones that are good quality, that's a really good resource.
That's great. Does everyone want to just unmute so that if you want to ask a question, you could speak directly? Would anybody?
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Hi.
I want to know, I saw, this is my first time here. I saw that you have a book out. Is the book different, is the book and your website kind of the same?
Yeah, so the website, honestly, the website's going to be more informative than the book because the book is several years old, and the website, I do a monthly blog. So there's a lot more. And the book is really more, it's eating plans. It's 4 weeks. There's two, volume 1, volume 2, and they're actually eating plans, and they calculate exactly what you need to eat in order to get your calcium. For instance, there's menus and cooking. So they're really designed for people that want you to tell me exactly what to eat. And it does have some nutrition info in it, but if you're looking more for, just give me lots of info and help educate me, honestly, my website's better than the eating plan.
But the eating plan is still correct, up to
Oh,
date.
it's absolutely still correct. It's just not going to have, it's not going to have the bone, those, like I was talking about, you know, some of the boron and some of those more
Yeah,
newer
yeah,
nutrients with more
yeah.
research on them that we didn't know so much about when I wrote it.
Thanks.
It's great.
I have a question about vitamin D and COVID, because the rumors going around were that we all needed to up our vitamin D during COVID. And as far as I'm concerned, we're still in that time period.
Right, I agree.
So are the numbers that you put up there the same numbers, or do you feel that we should be increasing our vitamin D
You know,
beyond what you just said?
It's an excellent question. And, you know, once again, consumerlab.com they do an excellent review of the literature on that exact topic. They're doing a lot on COVID right now in nutrition. And they do a really good review. And basically what they said in reviewing the literature is that increasing your vitamin D when you're healthy and don't have COVID and thinking it's going to make a difference, there's no data to support that. You need for your vitamin, the problem is more in people whose vitamin D is low, which is common. So we want to be sure everyone's got a good, healthy vitamin D level. And so that's what's really important. But they're talking, there's no proof at all to say that because of COVID, we now need to have our vitamin D higher than what's already considered safe. But it is important to be sure that it is normal and that it's not gotten too low, because it could increase your chances of problems with COVID. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I have one other question, and
Sure.
that's something you said early on in your talk, and it was about tracking your calcium. So because of this, I just had some leftover salmon as my dinner, but I made sure I added some orange and red peppers that I had in the veggie bin. And I'm veggie mostly. I eat fish because you cannot get enough vitamin B by supplements. And according to nutritionfacts.org, Michael Greger, who speaks every year at the Vegetarian Festival in Boston, without additional vitamin B, without enough vitamin B12 and all the vitamin Bs, a vegetarian's health risks are the same as any meat eater.
Sample you plan, Dana?
No.
Yeah, I mean, B12, it's probably important for all of us because of the fact that as we get older, our absorption of B12 tends to decrease. But it's even more important in vegetarians because B12 is mainly obtained from meat products. But so I'm sorry, but so what is your actual question?
So the vitamin, well, I was the person who asked also about the multivitamins. Like, I know we need to have more B12 in our systems if we're vegetarian. So that's why I eat fish, but I don't eat chicken or meat.
Right. You know, if you're mainly vegetarian, you probably would benefit from taking a multivitamin, and it will have B12 in it. And as long as your B12 is normal and you haven't been diagnosed with a B12 deficiency, that's adequate. The challenge with B12 is most B12 supplements that are standalone are designed for people with deficiencies because they're real high levels. But if you take a multivitamin, that has a more of a maintenance amount. Or when I have people who aren't going to take a multivitamin, they don't need a multivitamin, but we need B12, then we'll use like the drops of B12 because you can control the amount. But for you, I think as a vegetarian, a multivitamin is good and it'll have B12 in it. You know, you don't want to get too much B12. It's interesting. There are some studies that found increase your chance of fractures. It was a weird study. I don't know, but it said if both your B12 and your B6 are too high, it increases your chances of fractures. But, you know, that's one study. Nutrition studies are hard to do. And many of them are not cause. They don't prove cause. They're just correlation studies. You know, we saw a correlation here, not a cause. And that's what that study is. It didn't prove anything. It just identified a link. And it's just one more reason why we need our vitamins, we need our nutrition, but there are no advantages to mega dosing because your body has, it's really has a very delicate balance, and you start throwing extra stuff in there, it gets, for lack of a better word, confused. There was actually a Harvard researcher, Mark Hegstead. He died a few years ago. He's 95. And one of his theories is that one of the reasons we have so much osteoporosis in this country is that we've over supplemented with calcium. And I mean, I know I took calcium supplements for years. That's what they told us to do. That's what I learned as a dietitian. And that he felt like that it had basically messed up the whole metabolic pathway of calcium in our bodies from years and years and years of probably getting enough in your diet and then adding a supplement. So anyway, sorry, I'm on my soapbox about supplements.
I have one other question, and that is, do we need to track our calcium like all day long? Is it like, what is the most efficient way of doing that if that's what we need to do?
Initially you do it. It's work. It's a hassle. But once you've done it for a while, then you will get to where automatically. I've done it so long, I just automatically kind of remember the amounts of calcium, and so it is a hassle at first, but I'll tell you what I'll do. I have a calcium worksheet that I give to my clients, and I'll send that to Shelley too, to share with you all. And it's a worksheet, just lists a lot of foods and what their calcium is, and then you can add some of your own. And it helps you do it, it'll kickstart it for you.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Some of the people in the chat are writing different questions, Nancy.
Okay.
See the chat.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Let me look at that.
Someone asked about.
We're going to send the slides.
Oh, the protein supplemented foods.
Okay. Yeah. So at the beginning, what I was talking
I'm sorry.
about.
I actually meant calcium supplemented, not.
Okay. I was going to clarify
Sorry.
that. Okay.
Oh.
Yeah. No, I'm just saying that when you have foods that are supplemented with calcium, like the plant-based milks, think of that in the same way you think of a supplement, not as a food that naturally contains calcium, because your body absorbs the calcium much more efficiently and readily that way. And so it has the same risks as taking too much of a supplement. So what I'm saying is just be careful with those foods and be sure that you're not overdosing on them. And the reason I say it is I had a client one time who proudly announced to me that she was, drinking a quart of almond milk a day. So she was way exceeding her calcium intake in the form technically of a supplement. And so I mainly just don't want people to make that mistake, because I totally can see how it could happen.
That's great.
Okay, let's see. Do we have one? Does that answer your question about what you missed on the calcium? I think hopefully it does.
Yeah, I think so. If you're drinking, Dad, will you mute for a second? Sorry, my dad and I are on together. So if you want to drink milk, for example, it's best to have cow's milk, not almond milk, soy milk, whatever, even if you prefer almond milk.
No, I'm so glad that we let you finish your thought there. No, I'm not saying that at all. Dairy's interesting. The research on dairy says, even though the Dairy Council would have us feel different, that when they look at dairy products, they actually find that the more milk people drink, the higher their mortality and morbidity rate is. But if they take their dairy in the form of cottage cheese, cheeses, yogurt, kefir, fermented milk, it's just the opposite. They appear to be very good for us. So it's really debatable whether milk is good for us. However, I mean, I put a little on cereal in the morning. If I'm having chocolate chip cookies, I'm going to have a glass of milk, but I don't drink the amount of milk that I used to drink. Now I try to use yogurt and kefir and eat a little cheese every day. So it's okay if especially if you prefer to use a plant-based milk. It's okay to do it. Just remember, don't OD on it and count it as a supplement for the day. So let's say that in your diet, you figured you got 800 milligrams of calcium. And so you say, oh, I need to take 400 as a supplement. Well, if you got 400 from your almond milk, then that's the same as a supplement. So does that make sense? Ever I've confused
That
you
makes
more?
so much sense, Nancy, and it's really, really helpful.
Okay, good. Let's see, talk about vegetables and how nutrition is cooking lightly better than cooking until very soft. Yeah, always. The less you cook, and it's interesting because it depends on the vegetable. Some vegetables, like tomatoes, you get certain nutrients from tomatoes, or you're going to get more if you cook them, but then other nutrients in the same tomatoes, you're going to get more of it if they're raw. So you need to just eat both raw and cooked vegetables. But anytime you cook too much or overcook, you are probably, especially with the water soluble vitamins like vitamin C, you can lose more of the nutrition. So I love roasting my vegetables. That's how I like to cook them. But you can cook them however you want, steaming, whatever. But I tend to like them roasted, number one, because it's really easy. And number two, because it really concentrates the flavor of them. And I like it that way. So I think that I answered that one. If not, speak up and let me know. What is a good vitamin D blood level? It's the recommended is 30 to 35. There's a research.
Excuse me, could everybody mute unless you're speaking? I hesitate asking, just muting everyone at once because I want you to have the opportunity to speak. But it would be really nice if you could mute unless you're asking a question. Thank you.
So there's a big research out at Tufts University. Her name's Beth Dawson Hughes. And her recommendation is really right around 34. And then 30 to 35 is consumerlab.com's recommendations. And they say if you get to 39 and you're on a supplement, you need to, look at the amount. You either need to go to more of a maintenance level and just be sure you're not taking too much. Oh yeah, this is a good one. I always get asked this one, and I have a blog on it too. Many greens have high oxalic acid. Should we be mindful about taking greens like spinach? Yeah, very good question. It's a really popular question. Please eat spinach. Spinach is so good for you. It's a wonderful nutrient, but it probably won't be your greatest source of calcium. Now, if you're a person who ate massive amounts of spinach, I would tell you to not quite eat so much, but, I have a spinach salad, put spinach in, your foods and saute them. Yes, it does have oxalic acid, and therefore the calcium in spinach is not going to be that available. Like if you look up how much calcium is in spinach, you're like, wow, that's really a lot. But in reality, your body doesn't absorb that much of it. If you're going for calcium, then kale is a much better one. But don't quit eating spinach if you enjoy it. It is a super nutritious food. It just doesn't happen to be your best source of calcium. And like everything, moderation.
So I'm sorry. So I'm the one asked that question. So is there any way, cooking, best way to cook it to get rid of the oxalic acid without lose nutrition? Or, yeah.
No, it's really just the calcium that oxalic acid affects. And no, cooking, it's not going to make you have more calcium from it. That oxalic acid is already binding the calcium in the spinach. And so you just don't absorb that much of it. but it's still, all the other nutrients are still readily available. I mean, honestly, and I don't mean to sound flippant, but don't worry about it. It's fine. That's just a popular thing on the internet these days. And it is true. Spinach isn't going to be a great source of calcium, but it's a very nutritious food and you should include it if you enjoy it.
Actually, for me, the question is, it's not eating the spinach for calcium content. It's for other nutrition. But what I worry about is when I have like a salad, have spinach and other, like kale, or when I have other like maybe tofu, very calcium rich food at the same meal, well, taking the spinach at the same time decrease my calcium intake, or should I avoid eating spinach when I have high calcium, food?
Right. So you're worried that oxalic acid is going to bind to everything else, not just the calcium in the spinach.
Right.
It's not an issue.
Okay.
It's not an issue. Now if you were eating a ton of spinach, but even then, I mean, it's fine. If you like your salads that way, go ahead and do it. If it makes you feel better and you want to eat them, just have a spinach salad alone and have your kale as a separate kind of a salad at another time. That's fine too, but it's really, there's no good data to support that you need to separate from other foods. But so it's a good question.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
I have a question. I eat Indian diet, and we eat a lot of rice and beans, like black-eyed beans and split lentils, and
I'm going to email her tomorrow.
red kidney beans. So is it okay to eat those legumes and beans every day?
Yes. I mean, beans are such a healthy food. They're a great way for someone who's, did you say you were vegan or vegetarian?
I'm a vegetarian. I eat fish and chicken, but I don't eat red meat.
Okay. If you can eat beans every day, the deal with beans, of course, is the not oxalic acid, but you've got the lignans and some of those type things. But as long as the beans are cooked, it's not an issue. Yeah.
Okay.
So no, beans are such a good food. They really are. And they're a good source of calcium too, as well as protein. And, we saw they're a source of a lot of those nutrients that people tend to not get enough. So yeah, I don't have any issue with you having beans every day, as long as you're getting all the other stuff.
I have your book.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
And I was following some of your smoothie recipes, and I realized that you don't use milk at all, but you use almond milk.
Right.
What's the reason?
Well, it's because, there's two reasons why I did that. One is because of the research about milk and not necessarily being good for you. Also because a lot of people don't want to drink milk, so, but now I will tell you that, and if you look on my blogs, you'll see I've got my smoothie recipe, I've kind of changed it, and I use kefir now instead of almond milk.
Okay.
There's a smoothie recipe on one of my blogs. It's kind of my revised one. But I think I say in there, that you can substitute milk if you want to, if you don't want to use the.
No, I just wanted to find out, is there a reason behind
those were my two reasons. Okay. But kefir is actually my favorite way to make them.
Okay. All right.
Okay. I have another question regarding natto. You mentioned fermented.
Have you had it?
Yeah, I'm eating it, but I just wondering how much is a good, for a day serving? How much should I eat? I
have no idea. I would imagine that, whatever it's in Japan, it's a traditional food. So whatever, are you from Japanese? Is that okay?
I just acquired that taste, maybe.
Okay. You're the first person I've ever met who eats it. I love it.
Just because of the nutrition, I don't like it, but
you just eat it because you know it's Well, I think that whatever the traditional, whatever, they just eat a serving of it in Japan. The research that I read it was just something they had for breakfast. My impression was not they ate a whole lot of it. So I think just, you know, a half, I mean, how much do you eat? Like a half a cup
I
or?
don't know, I eat maybe, no, yeah, a quarter to about 50 grams. I just weigh it every time. I
Yeah,
don't know
you
if it's
know,
good
and
enough.
I don't know if I'm going to Google it real quick, if it's available to know how much K2 is in natto. How do you say it? I may not say it right.
Natto.
Natto?
I don't know.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
not Japanese, but I think it's called natto.
It says 100 grams serving is 108 micrograms of K2. So that's about the same. That's about a 3-ounce serving, you know, so a little less than half a cup probably. So it's about the same as cheese. So, you know.
Okay.
Okay, you know what? You've got a few more questions. I want to make
Okay,
sure
let's
I ask you.
let's see,
Seltzer water detrimental to bones?
well, I don't know if it's detrimental, but it's not going to have any advantages. When I talked about the mineral water, that's what I encourage, and not seltzer water. It's not going to have the same minerals in it. Is elemental calcium okay? You mean as a supplement, I assume?
Diane, can you answer that here?
Yes, I take Bone Up, which is by Jarrow, and it has a lot of the, just as a supplement, probably like 1/4 of the total supplemental. What's the word I'm looking for?
Daily
Requirement, yes.
Right.
So I try to get, as much as possible from food, but then I take like 1/3 of a dose. And the calcium is elemental calcium from StimuCal. I just wondered, is that right?
Yeah,
Actually,
I'm familiar with the product. So, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that's fine. Consumer Lab, I think, reviewed it, and it's not a top choice for them because it's so expensive. But because they always focus on quality and cost, but I don't believe they had any issues with it. I personally, and it's just my personal opinion, I don't think there's any special advantage to that, but I don't think it's going to hurt anything. So, and you're doing the right thing. You're already making sure you're not taking too much. So, but you know, I don't know that it doesn't, there's no proof it does any better than any others, but it's fine.
So I know that somebody else asked you this, but you know, for calcium supplementation, is there something that you would recommend as a better product with the D and the boron and the magnesium and all that?
Well,
in
you
general?
know, it depends on when I do supplement recommendations, and I don't do many, it depends on the person, you know, because some people, I may not want them to have boron. They may be on estrogen, or they may get plenty of boron in their diet. So it's like, you don't need a boron supplement. So it depends on the person. But once again, I use consumerlab.com a lot for their supplement recommendations.
I was just on their site and they charge like $90 to join.
No way. They got up to 90 for 1 year?
I believe it's for 2 years, but
okay,
I'm not
yeah,
sure.
that may they have. I knew they had gone up, but that's $45 a year. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, that is a little more than I thought. And for me, it's worth it because I use it with all my clients. But for you know, so let's see. Does it include vegetarian, vegan recipes in my meal on my book? Not all of them. There's meat and fish and chicken in there. I think I set it up to have 2 vegetarian meals, 2 days a week that I try to do vegetarian meals. I try to get people to eat more vegetarian, but if you are totally vegetarian, you're not going to like the eating plan because it has a lot of meals where you'd end up having to do something different because it does have some meat and fish in it. I don't have a problem with vegetarian. You just have to plan more carefully to be sure you get everything. Please define mineral water. Well, so my favorite one is San Pellegrino. It has 50 milligrams of calcium in it. And that, I like that one. It's, I don't know about Boston and Texas, it's easy to find. And you know, any of those in that area, but I like it a lot. And you know, do y'all have Topo Chico?
Yeah.
Probably not. That's a Texas thing. So never mind. But yeah, San Pellegrino is one of my favorite ones because it has more calcium. It's easy to find. And I wrote a blog on that, and my old brain is forgetting. There's another one I wrote in there that's really high in calcium, but I can never find it. But I don't remember the name of it. I'll send the link to the blog.
Oh, thank you.
Could I ask a follow-up question on that?
Yeah.
Is carbonation okay?
I'm glad you asked that. Yeah, yes, the carbonation in mineral water is fine. The problem with carbonation, I think where the link came in is colas, which appeared to not be good for your bones. The studies actually show that it's the colas that are the problem and not the Sprites and 7-Ups, although I don't recommend any of those products to drink. And they think it's because of the phosphate, probably, because there's no phosphate additives in 7-Up and Sprite, but there is in the dark colored colas. So I guess that's where this whole carbonation issue came in. So you don't want to drink those kind of things, but the carbonation that's, you know, in mineral water is not an issue. That's fine.
Okay, what about things like Spendrift or like Polar Seltzer?
Yeah, I'd have to look all those products up, but I'm almost positive that those are not mineral waters. Those are flavored waters and carbonated waters. So
yeah, they're not cola like Coke.
Yeah, so read the labels, see if they have phosphate additives. And I think those don't have sugars, right? They've got flavoring in them. So as long as they don't have a bunch of phosphate additives and there's something you enjoy drinking, then I don't know of any reason why it would be a problem, but definitely check for the phosphate additives. And then the calcium from algae, I don't think it's worth it. There's no, when you look at the studies that aren't done by the company that makes the product, there's absolutely no evidence that they have any advantage, but they're expensive. So I don't recommend them. But if you want to take it, that's fine. Sugars. Sugar is bad for us. Sugar is inflammatory. And osteoporosis is an inflammatory disease. Sugar has an effect on collagen. It's a negative as far as collagen in our bodies go, and that links to bones. So we don't have studies that definitely say sugar is bad for our bones, but we have a lot of reason to think that a high sugar diet not only is bad for us in a million other ways, but it's bad for our bones. So same recommendation as always, you can have a dessert, but make it, just not every day, a special occasion. Or I allow myself a dessert on Saturday and Sunday night, and the rest of the week, I don't eat desserts. Just moderation.
Okay.
And sprouted beans and seeds, those are a great choice. Those are fine. You don't have to do it. But they may be for some people also just absorbed, better. So they're fine. That's fine. I think we went over.
No, it's great. I'm just looking to make sure we're not missing anything.
I have one last question about that, tracking the calcium.
Yeah.
When you say eating the vegetables, is it like a bite of fish and then a bite of a vegetable, or is it just eating vegetables and at the same time that you're eating, in the same meal?
Oh, okay. I'm glad you said that. No, it's just in the same, preferably in the same meal if you can. But even if it's just even if it's by the end of the day, and you don't have to. It's not the kind of thing where you got to be really precise. Those are general guidelines. Do your best with them. The main thing is just don't eat a typical Western diet that's practically no fruits and vegetables, and and it doesn't sound like you do. So, but no, you don't. Try to do it that way at every meal, but don't, stress if you're a little short occasionally. and just kind of try to do it on a daily basis, and that's fine. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I just didn't know if I like, you
No.
said it as I was taking a bite of food. So I thought, oh, I've got vegetables right here. So I just thought I had to eat like right away.
Right away. So, and who knows, but I don't, but probably not, just enough to keep that from going overload on acid.
Mhm. Thank you.
I guess I have a question for you. before
Oh,
we
okay.
close, Nancy, and that would be, have you ever seen people have considerable change in their situation with their osteoporosis based on their diet?
Yeah, so two things on that. One, I simply don't know, because a lot of the people, that buy my books or read my website, I never even know. And then the clients I have, unfortunately, usually one session is all they need and they're good. And they may, and a few of them will do a follow-up, but long-term, I haven't, I ask them all, let me know how you do.
Yeah.
And I did have one lady, but recently told me she decided to go on a med, but I just counseled her like last month. So that's not really a good, but I will say that I never want anyone to believe that I am saying that this diet alone is going to do it, because it won't. It's part of, you have got to do that targeted exercise as well. And I have, if anyone's, I have two great physical therapists, one in Canada. Y'all probably know of these ladies, Margaret Martin, and then a lady in Philadelphia, Joanne Fagerstrom, who they both have websites and do classes. Joanne actually did reverse her osteoporosis. I've done workshops with her. So you've got to do both. But I wish I could tell you about all these people that followed my diet, it changed their bones, but.
Yeah.
Could you repeat Joanne's last name, please?
Oh, yeah, I'm gonna write it down because I have to look at it to be sure I tell you right. Fagerstrom. And I also, one of my fairly recent blogs talks about exercise. It's my only non-nutrition blog, and I give her name and I think a link to her website and Margaret Martin's. They're
Thank you.
both really good. In fact, I learned from them the upper body lifts is a really good exercise for your vertebra. So
You said
but
Margaret Martin, like
Margaret Martin, her website's melioguide.com.
Oh, yeah.
melioguide.com, melioguide.com. Her website has a ton of info. Joanne's doesn't have as much info, but she does have a CD or a jump drive program, and she does online classes too. With COVID, she started doing Zoom classes, and I think she now has it set up to where you can just look at them anytime you want. You don't even have to do them as the class.
It's wonderful.
I have a consultation with Margaret Martin next week.
Oh, good.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, very good. That's excellent.
Well, I will definitely send everybody all the information that you've provided. Nancy, this was fabulous.
Oh, good. I'm glad it
And
was helpful.
I don't know if you see the comments where people said how generous you've been with your time.
Oh, well, thank
That
you.
might
That
have
makes
been
me
to
feel good.
me, but also I think we've learned an awful lot from you, and very appreciative of your presentation.
Thank you. Thanks. I appreciate it. I'm glad to hear that. And best of luck to you. And I will send the calcium worksheet, the link to the blog on mineral waters, and my slides.
And I just also want to say, I thought everything in your website was so reasonably priced.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks.
really very affordable.
So good, good. That was my goal.
Yeah.
Could I ask just one last question that nobody brought up?
Yes.
Hopefully
Hopefully I can answer the last one.
Okay, my name is Karen, and I heard you talk about collagen, and I was wondering, should we be taking a collagen supplement? I've heard a lot about bone broth and things like that, and I wondered what your feeling was on it.
Yeah, so I wrote a blog on that, so you can check that out for more info. But I don't think it hurts anything. But the research on collagen that's positive is all industry supported.
Oh,
So,
okay.
that makes it a little questionable. And a lot of the scientists say the problem with it is that when collagen gets in your body, they don't really think that that your body knows it's collagen, because it breaks it down into the component amino acids, and then it uses it in a way that your body most needs it. So if you have a wound, it's going to send all those amino acids there, or whatever. And so the question is does the body really know it's collagen, and does it really handle it any different than any other protein?
And so I'll get the information, because I came in a little late on how to get your book and how to get into your blog.
Food and then with the number 4.
Yep.
Osteoporosis.com.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, and so you can look at the deal on that. And if you want to take collagen, it's fine. But I don't think there's strong support that it makes a difference. But I haven't seen anything to say that it's bad. And I also wrote one recently on creatine too. So you can look at that one, because that's another one that a lot of people ask about.
All right. Okay.
Okay.
Oh, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. And have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This was
Bye.
great. Thank you very much, Nancy.
You're welcome.
Appreciate.
And you know what? Nancy just left. Let me just go back to gallery view. I like to look at everybody. And thank you for all the questions. The questions were fantastic. Really, I think that's what kept everything moving along. And I hope you learned some things. I know.
Shelley, may I add one thing?
Yes.
There's a really good blog for those who are vegetarian called nutritionfacts.org. And it's a Tufts trained doctor. He's the only person who's invited to the Vegetarian Fair in Boston every single year. There are plenty of other guest speakers, but he's the only one they bring back year after year. And nutritionfacts.org not only has information about a lot of the foods, but if you put in various ailments, and now I'm going to follow my own advice and go in tomorrow and look at osteoporosis. He has blogs by the different illnesses and the food products that will go with them to help people. So I think that's and it's nutritionfacts.org as opposed to .com. He's not trying to make money off of, extra money off of all of this. And there's a lot of, and he always puts on links to the nutrition, the documentation that goes with all of it. So it's not just his writing.
Great.
Nice. Very nice.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steffi.
And I also wanted to just say just a little disclaimer too, about anything that you hear on here is not intended. This is intended just for supplementation, for your own knowledge, for you to explore further. There's no definitive answers on any of these things. We all have to make our own decisions. I know you're probably tired of me saying that, some of you, but I just feel it's so necessary to make sure you know that I'm not advocating for this particular nutritionist or that particular ideology. I just want to present more information, and it's up to all of us to make those decisions. And so anyway.
We appreciate you, Shelley.
Yes, thank you.
Well, appreciate you as well. And I just want to make sure that I don't misrepresent what happens on here.
Shelley, just want to remind you, you want to stop recording.
Oh, that's right. Thank you, thank you, thank you.